The Living Zen-podcast is a gift from the members and associates of the Victoria Zen Centre to you. If you enjoy it, please be sure to let your friends know about Living Zen. If you'd like to support our community, here are a few ways that you can do it. Download the Living Zen podcast app for iPod, iPhone, or Android. You can also purchase additional Zen Talks by Venerable Eshu on iTunes or Amazon.com. One of the most meaningful ways to show your support is by joining our Sangha as an associate. Your commitment of $10 a month will ensure that offerings like the Living Zen podcast and our online e-Zendo will continue to be available around the world to everyone with an interest in truly living Zen. To become an associate, please visit our website at www.zenwest.ca and click on the membership tab. Thank you for your support. For many of us, it seems like the motivation, the interest in engaging in some kind of practice, in engaging in something like Zen meditation, contrary to what we might think, doesn't come from being scattered or being having problems, but it often comes from a single moment or a number of moments of clarity where we have this brief insight into the functioning of our minds, how we're thinking, how we're going about doing the activity of our lives. And we think, wow, there's something really strange about this, or there's something really repetitive about this. There's something about this that is causing me grief, difficulty, suffering. And so we often, after we see this a few times, after we experience this a few times, we decide, maybe there's something that I can do about this way that I'm thinking, or about the way that I'm engaging or making relationship with this person or with this situation, with the world around me. And so we come to engage in a practice like Zen meditation. And so we come into this environment, this, as I've spoken about many times, this kind of intentionally created, somewhat contrived environment, this structured form. And we're given these very straightforward, simple instructions on how to engage in this simple practice of sitting. Sitting in a posture that we can maintain in stillness, in stability, and engaging in this simple activity of just breathing, paying attention with all of our senses to the space that we're occupying in this world right now. Paying attention to this simple activity that we're engaged in this world right now. We like to provide an environment and engage in a practice which sort of strips off all of the extras, brings us right into the most simple activity that we can do as human beings, which is just to sit and be. So we engage in this really primal activity of paying attention to our breath. This breath is something that we began to do the moment we were born, and we will continue to do until the moment we die. And we have to ask, how much attention do we pay to that activity of breathing? And maybe we have a yoga class, and for the yoga class we pay attention to our breath, maybe for a part of it, when we're not grunting and groaning. But for the rest of the day, we pay almost no attention to it. So in this practice of meditation, we really want to pay attention to the activity of the breath rising and falling in the body. And when we bring ourselves to stillness, when we bring our physical bodies into this relaxed but still posture of seated meditation. When we bring our minds to bear on this continuous, relaxed activity of breathing, we find that everything kind of settles down. We find that if we just bring our eyes to focus in front of us, relaxing all around the eyes, relaxing the whole body, we find that the body slips deeply into relaxation. And what we can find when we engage in this kind of practice is that what's happening within, what's happening in our mental and emotional world begins to arise in greater and greater clarity. We find that in response to the mental and emotional activity that we kind of have a binary sort of response. We do one of two things. The first one is to reject it. So we have an emotion that comes up. And then they can be any emotion, positive or negative. Anger, fear, grief, joy, love, all these emotions come up. And sometimes we say, oh, maybe I'm meditating right now, or maybe getting involved in these kinds of emotions that arise is not a good thing to do while I'm meditating. So we engage in this activity of kind of pushing them out, not wanting these emotions to be there. Now, I'm not saying that this is appropriate practice. I'm saying that this is kind of the natural response that we have as human beings to emotions arising. The same happens with thoughts. Images, ideas start to crop up in our mind, and we sit there and think, oh, I'm supposed to be meditating right now. I should get rid of these thoughts. From the perspective of Buddhism, both thoughts and emotions are products or objects of the mind. The other second response that we have to things arising in our practice, arising in our mind, is that we jump on board wholeheartedly. We kind of embrace them as being absolutely real. So when an emotion arises, we sort of get on board first and ask questions about it later. So if anger sort of crops up, we kind of jump on board with the anger and then start looking around at what is making us angry. Where do we lay the blame? If it's grief, it's the same thing. We climb on board first and then start to look at, oh, what's making me feel this way? What's making me feel so terrible? You've all had instruction on seated meditation, and that the practice with the body is that we have all of the senses open. We have the body, the heart, the chest open. But we're rooted, we're balanced, we're centered. With the eyes, for example, when we're looking down at the floor in front of us, it's a relaxed gaze so that our vision is just this, the whole field of vision is open. Now, it takes a while to get used to this because we have these two tendencies. One of them is to focus, to look at. So with our eyes, we sort of look at something. And often when we're not aware of this, this is when you start to see like faces in the floor. And we start to worry about what the person across from us is wearing or what they look like. And then the other response that we have is to avoid it. So we want to close our eyes. Oh, just keeping my eyes open and relaxed is really boring, and I just want to close my eyes and relax. And this twofold kind of reaction is the same across all of the senses. Closing our eyes is like avoiding, cutting off the sense completely. Focusing sharply is this grabbing on, grasping at the sense information. And all of the senses are the same. The practice that we engage in Zen is to keep bringing ourselves back to this center, balanced position in which the senses are open. And in Buddhism, the mind is considered the sixth sense. So as thoughts arise, as emotions arise in practice, which they will, absolutely, our job is not to suppress them or to avoid them. When we're in the meditation hall, it's not that thoughts don't arise. It's not that emotions shouldn't arise. But likewise, we're not grabbing onto them. We're not getting fixated with them. We're not attaching to them or following up on them or trying to play with them. We just keep coming back to this center position, not avoiding, not indulging. One metaphor I like to use is very much like driving. So when we're driving, the idea is to keep the vehicle sort of between the line in the center of the road and the gutter on the other side of the road. But when we're driving, we don't sort of have this white knuckle grip on the steering wheel where, we have to stay exactly between the line and exactly away from the gutter. If you drive like that, you get very tired very quickly and really annoy any passengers that are with you. Driving is a much more relaxed state of awareness. Sometimes the vehicle sort of moves towards the line. And when we become aware that the vehicle's moving more towards the line, we recognize it. And we move the car back into the center of the lane. And sometimes the car moves towards the gutter. And again, we just recognize it gently. We don't want to reef the wheel back over to the center. Just gently guiding it back to the center. The idea that meditation is a rigid state, that we can somehow sort of lock in this perfect state of meditation balance, is a myth in my experience. And it's not the idea of practice, not to find a resting place where we can just sort of turn everything off. Our practice is about developing awareness of our lives in the midst of the activity of living them. Where is our mind right now? What are we doing right now? How are we using our body right now? What are we saying right now? This practice is cultivated, is developed through this simple practice of being aware of what we're doing with our mind and body in the context of this formal practice. As we sit, our practice is to be aware of what we're doing. So, just sitting right now, we're being aware of the activity of sitting, just with our eyes slightly open. If our eyes close, it's not a problem. We don't need to think, I'm no good at this meditation. Just gently bring them back open. If we find ourselves focusing sharply on something, again, it's not a problem. Just recognize it and allow the vision to soften. Allow the peripheral vision to open up, to take in the full field of vision. With the mind and with the emotions, thoughts and emotions, as they arise, we're just aware of them, see them, acknowledge them. Yes, I'm feeling this, I'm thinking that. But we don't need to get involved in them, and we don't need to try to chase them out of the space of meditation. This is why we pay attention so much to our breath. Because rather than latching on to the good or bad of our thoughts or emotions, we just return to following the breath. This allows us to ground ourselves. This allows us to bring ourselves back to center. Thoughts, as long as you have a mind, thoughts and emotions will arise and they will diminish. Just like as long as you have eyes, if they're open, you will take in the visual world. As long as you have functioning ears, you will take in the matter, the object of hearing. Thoughts and emotions are the objects of mind, and of themselves, they're not a problem to our meditation practice. It's only in how we interact, how we hold them, when we try to suppress them or avoid them, or when we jump into them and start spinning them, that they become an issue. So when we begin practice, when we first make this realization, wow, things sure are messy in here, and we come to take up this practice, we find that this initial introduction, this first instruction in seated meditation of simply how to keep coming back to center, is not like a beginner's teaching. It's not, just class 1. This capacity of returning to center, of letting go of the things that we're grasping onto, of allowing the things that we're resisting or trying to avoid into the space of our hearts, into the space of our minds, to allow it to be present without feeling the need to do anything about it. This is a practice which carries us through our practice, carries us through our whole lives, from beginning to end.
Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.